And the same agencies that knew that are the agencies that shut down the schools for 2 years. Who does that? Who takes away the support system for these children? Who takes them away and shuts it down? And by the way, when they shut it down, they stopped the mandated reporters from being able to see children that were being, and in fact sent them home and abandoned them to their abusers.
Dr. Phil went on The View and absolutely obliterated every single dumb opinion that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of these woke idiots hold, and also pretty much had their audience turn on them during the show and applauded for Dr. Phil, which is going directly against everything that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of The View have been stating. So let's check out this clip here from the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire tweet reads, and that's not an opinion, that's a fact. Dr. Phil shuts down the host of The View as he points out the damaging effects of CV lockdowns for children. Let's check this out here.
And the same agencies that knew that are the agencies that shut down the schools for 2 years. Who does that? Who takes away the support system for these children? Who takes them away and shuts it down? And by the way, when they shut it down, they stopped the mandated reporters from being able to see children that were being, and in fact sent them home and abandoned them to their abusers with no way to watch, and referrals dropped 50 to 60%. So
there was also a pandemic going on. They were trying to save
kids' lives. Remember, we know a lot of folks who died during this. So it wasn't, people weren't laying around eating bond, but, well, you know what? We're lucky. Maybe we're lucky they didn't, because we kept them out of the places that they could be sick, because.
But I thought we were keeping everybody else out of those places too. And the people who you're talking about who died, they were, you know, supposedly locked down as well, you know, kept out of those places as well. But it didn't affect children. You know, it didn't kill any of the children. So why did the lockdowns work for children and not for anyone who died? And, you know, we can't go too deep into the reasoning, of course, in these videos on these mainstream platforms, but I think most of you know the reasoning anyway. You don't need me to sit here and explain it to you. You probably already know exactly why those people died and the children didn't. But anyway, let's continue on and hear Whoopi Goldberg's reasoning, you know, and the rest of the View's reasoning for, you know, how they're going to solve the world's problems.
No one wanted to believe we had an issue.
Are you saying no school children died of COVID?
I'm saying it was the safest group. They were the less vulnerable group, and they suffered. And
did any of them die from CV? Can anybody tell me in the comments? Because I thought that, I mean, I'm sure that some of them died, of course. Like, you know, people die from crazy things all the time. People get struck by lightning sometimes and die. So people die from crazy things all the time. You know, I'm not saying that there's never going to be an exception to the rule, but yeah, it did seem like, I mean, no school children died from that. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but it seemed like that. Maybe an outlier here or there, but for the most part, yes, that is what Dr. Phil's saying, and he's right about it.
Will suffer more from the mismanagement of COVID than they will from the exposure to COVID. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
100%. And you can hear the audience start to applaud Dr. Phil, who was going directly against Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and the rest of The View, the rest of the View's woke opinions. And that's when you know it's bad. And Mike says it right here. The fact that the audience applauded shows just how out of touch those blathering harpies are when it comes to how most parents see this issue, and just how common sense views the issue. I refuse to believe that they all don't have any common sense. I don't think that's the case. I think they know what talking points they're supposed to state. Nobody watches their show. Their show absolutely sucks. Nobody cares about their opinions. So they have to keep spewing these talking points in order to stay on air. Because if they keep pushing this propaganda and this agenda, then they'll keep getting paid to stay on air, even though they get no viewership and nobody cares what they have to say unless we're laughing at them like we are in this video. Nobody otherwise cares what they have to say. So they have to keep pushing this propaganda and these talking points, or else they don't get paid. I don't think that they lack common sense that much. The right guy says Dr. Phil knows the truth. He isn't afraid to speak it. I always liked Dr. Phil. I always knew Dr. Phil was based. You know, he just went on that show and absolutely destroyed all the woke talking points that they've been spewing when it comes to that subject. And that wasn't the only clip. We also have this clip here from Western Linsman. It says, Dr. Phil, we are using American tax dollars to ship children into those rings, boxing rings, I guess we'll call it for this video. You know, PDF file rings. You know, PDF file like on a computer, you know. Can't say the actual word, but yeah, this is a must-watch. Dr. Phil tells The View that while he was visiting the southern border, a head of the border guards revealed this stunning information as children with phone numbers written on them continue to flow across the border. The source said, we know enough to know that in a number of cases, it has turned out to be in PDF file ring. So let's check out this clip here from Dr. Phil. Got to be a little bit careful here with the words that's being used and the language being used here. But let's check this out, because it's another thing that people like Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of these idiots on The View, they love to ignore, right? Sonny Hostin, the rest of them, they love to ignore this topic right here, because it makes their guy, Joe Biden, look bad. It makes the regime that's currently in power look bad whenever they talk about these things, because there's no way that you can talk about this and say anything positive about it. If you bring up the subject, you have to say something negative about the people who they bow down to, the people who they worship. So let's check out what Dr. Phil has to say to destroy the View and this one.
I talked to the head of all the border guards down there, the head of the union. I asked him straight up, kids are coming over the border with numbers written on them, phone numbers and addresses. Do we check those out? He said, well, we call them. Is it possible that we're sending them into known rings or sweatshops? He said, it's not possible. It is absolute. We are using American tax dollars to ship children into known prostitution and sweatshops.
Some children.
Well, who knows?
Okay.
We don't know.
Why does it matter? If it's one, it's too many. Why does it matter if it's what kind of question is that? All children? So if it's not all children, then that means that the tax dollars being used to do that is perfectly fine. It's not as bad. If a tax dollar is being used to do that for one child, it's too many. I mean, does that really need to be said? Is that really a based thing to say? Is that just common sense that these people have completely lost?
I said, are you...
So what kind of checking do they do? So
They call the number and say, do you know about this child? They say, yes. Will you receive them when they come? Yes. I said, is it possible that that's a prostitution ring? He said, we know enough to know that in a number of cases, it has turned out to be absolute sex ring. It has turned out to be an absolute sweatshop. I said, how is this possible?
Well, what do they do?
And he said, it is happening.
What do they do then if they know that that's happening? Where is the U.S. Attorney's Office? Where is the...
Here's the
good question.
It's a great question.
Re-ask that question when we come back. Because we're coming...
Oh, they got scared. They had to go to commercial break because Dr. Phil was unleashing on the regime that they have to worship.
Back with more.
Yeah, they had to come back with more. They had to go straighten out Dr. Phil in the back room and make sure that he's not going to reveal too much. And dude, it's wild, man. It's a wild place that we're in right now with this country, where these are the people who are being propped up by the elites, the Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar, Sonny Hostin, and the rest of the idiots on The View. Colin Rugg says, just in, The View host stunned after Dr. Phil says CV lockdowns were pointless for children and the damage they cause are way worse than CV itself. When they shut it down, they stopped the mandated reporters from being able to see children that were being abused and, those things that happen, bad things that happen to children, and in fact sent them home and abandoned them to their abusers. They suffered and will suffer more from the mismanagement of CV than they will from the exposure to CV, and that's not an opinion. That's a fact, 100%. And he says, glad someone is educating these clowns, referring to Dr. Phil. This one's from Jennifer Say. It says Dr. Phil is 1,000, or a lot of zeros there, right? And these women of The View are total hacks in addition to being quite dim. Give it up, ladies. Everyone now acknowledges school closures were an unmitigated disaster, except, of course, those completely blinded by ideology and blinded by paychecks, like I said, because if they don't spew these dumbass talking points, they don't get paid. That's how this thing works nowadays. We also have Robert F. Kennedy saying, thank you, Dr. Phil. An entire generation was set back by CV mismanagement. Our kids suffered and will continue to reap the consequences. I've yet to see any accountability for those in power. It was absolutely great for me to see someone like Dr. Phil get on The View and school them like that. And you don't get to see that often because they won't normally let people on their show that disagree with them even a little bit. So it was cool to see Dr. Phil go on The View and just tell Whoopi Goldberg and Sonny Hostin and the rest of the idiots on The View to their face, like, no, you're wrong on this, and here's why, and here's the facts. And not only that, but then the audience just turns on The View and starts clapping for what Dr. Phil was saying, in direct contrary to everything that The View hosts believe. So let me know what you guys think about this Dr. Phil appearance on The View. I thought it was absolutely awesome watching him destroy Whoopi Goldberg, directly to her face. But let me know what you guys thought about this whole situation. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I hope to see you on the next one.